Hello, welcome again. Let's talk about motivations. So the motivations are essentially the classes in the game. These provide characters with additional tools and abilities in the game that they can use and extra boosts to certain roles as a result of using those motivations. So the motivations are based on the gifts, which are listed in Romans chapter 12, verses 4 to 8, sometimes called the motivational gifts. I won't read it out for you here, but you can read it on the screen. So the gifts that are listed here are prophesying, ministry, teaching, exhortation, giving, leading, and the last one, which is simply showing mercy. So in this video, I'm going to explain what they all are and what their role is in the game. And then the next video, I'll explain how their abilities work in terms of the mechanics. Okay, so to start off, I'm calling these motivations because they are referred to as motivational gifts and are occasionally even used sometimes as descriptors of personality types. While I'm not really convinced that these fit as personalities per se, I'm more seeing these as what areas or tendencies a character is motivated towards, what kinds of activities they prefer to do, and kind of as a result, what kinds of things they tend to be better at. So your job does not determine your personality, no matter what people say. So let's look at these things in more detail. So firstly, I've changed the name of these from what they're listed in Scripture. The reason for this is because some of these don't really help to describe what they are. For example, one is called exhorting, which most people might know is a combination of kind of encouragement and pushing someone forward, but people don't really use that term very much. Others like mercy really don't have a clear definition of what that means at all. So I've tried to find alternative terms while still hopefully staying relatively true to what they mean. So in order, I've renamed them the following. Firstly, seer. The prophet is a seer, someone who sees what is happening spiritually. So a seer is always looking for what God is doing and listening to what God is saying. They are intense, passionate, and dedicated. They want to see justice done. They will stand up to authority and denounce them to their face if they are doing something wrong. In the Old Testament, a prophet's job was to represent God to the people. So the majority of the Old Testament is the words of the prophets. They were also very aware of what the Spirit of God was doing in and around the people and around the nation. They could see through lies, and they could see what the real motivations of others were, and they could also see what the purpose of God was in situations, hence the name seer. Essentially, in the game, a seer will always seek the truth and view things from a spiritual perspective. They're all about picking up clues and seeing behind the visible world, perceiving what God's doing and operating within the spiritual. Next one is the expert or teacher. So the teacher is an expert. I've called this role expert because, to my mind, a teacher is a specific job title, whereas an expert has a wider range, and they don't really need to be a teacher per se. So these people are the smartest. This is someone who focuses on knowledge and intellect above all. The motivation of an expert is to always seek further knowledge and understanding of things. This means that they want to read and research something and to always expand their understanding of a topic, and also to kind of connect the dots between different areas and work things out logically. So experts are all about solving puzzles, having knowledge, and also arguing and convincing others to come over to their point of view. An expert will have skills in things like history of a place, speaking a language, understanding customs, knowing what was going on in the past, all the things like that. Essentially, experts are the brains of a group. So that's an expert. The next one is an influencer or exhorter. So the exhorter was the hardest name to come up with an alternative title for, since exhorter is not a very common term. I've landed on influencer for the time being, even though I know influencer is kind of a negative connotation today, but it's the nearest I could find an actual term that we use with a similar meaning. If anyone has a better suggestion, please let me know in the comments. Exhorting someone literally means urging them on to the finish line. You're exhorting them forward. So this means that these people have the motivation to get to know others and help them become more than what they are already. So people with this motivation want to sway, to persuade, to encourage, and to help others. So an influencer motivation is to basically inspire people towards greater things. And in the game, an influencer is all about promoting, pushing people forward emotionally. This may include performing something, encouraging them, cajoling, bluffing, intimidating, or even lying if the player wants to. So whereas the expert, the previous one, wants to convince people intellectually, the influencer wants to convince people emotionally. So they can make great leaders and speakers, but also great con artists and charlatans. All right, the next one is the patron or the giver. So the next motivation, this is somebody who supports others by either providing or procuring items and money. Kind of like the quartermaster in a military operation. Patron motivation is to practically help people by providing things. This means they have the motivation to provide what people need in a particular way. This can range from money or goods to practical help and assistance to equipment and gadgets, things that they need. So people with this motivation are pragmatic and proactive. So in terms of this game, patrons are all about wanting to help through practical use of giving and providing. They're like Q from the James Bond films, and are excellent at both finding and getting equipment and supplies, and if they can't, then they create them from things that they can find lying around. They know the value of money, and they're good at negotiating and not getting conned. All right, the next one is a leader. The leader is, surprise, surprise, a leader, because that's the term we generally use, because it seems to be the most useful one. A leadership motivation is to get things done by inspiring and leading others. This means understanding how to give people responsibilities that they can grow into, and their motivation is about achieving things through organizing others to achieve more than they could alone. They coordinate people, they help them to work together. So generally speaking, a leader will want to lead by example, and will pitch in to help things and to be organized, they'll be structured, and they'll often try and understand people around them. So in the game, the leader is the only real all-rounder. Most of the other motivations tend to specialize in one or two attributes, whereas the leader is a much sort of more evener mix between the four. So in a game, a leader doesn't actually have to be the leader of the group. Like the player doesn't have to actually lead the group. They are there to essentially act as the motivating force and to coordinate others to work together, usually by filling in any gaps, because they've got practical abilities in most other areas. They've got skills in all four attributes, so they can contribute in any way that's needed and allow others to work in their own specialization by helping them. So that's basically how a leader will help a team to achieve their goal by serving others. So that's the principle. All right, the next one is a counselor or mercy. So the mercy gift I've renamed to be a counselor. That is someone who helps and heals emotionally. A counselor motivation is not just to influence, but to help others who are hurting. So different from the influencer who's basically trying to get to a certain emotional state, the counselor's motivation is about healing others, helping them with their emotional, sort of mental and physical needs. This is more about lending an ear, listening rather than telling people what to do. So this means being more insightful and empathic sort of with their help. In the game, a counselor is there to listen to others, and essentially they're much more aware of what others around them are feeling. So this person's about understanding, having insight into other people, empathy into what they're going through. And this helps them to be good at reading people and being able to work with others and be able to get answers and understand motivations. They're good at getting information out of people and also kind of talking people down who might be violent, who might be emotional. So if someone's attacking, being violent or physically attacking you, counsel might be able to talk them down just by rolling emotionally, using their emotional skills. Finally, the last one is the server, which I've called a caretaker. So the caretaker is essentially good with their hands and physically more adept than the other motivations. They're somebody who's good practically, good with physical skills, and good with basically using their hands. So a caretaker motivation will physically do what others need, not just giving like a patron, but actively facilitating, assisting, protecting others who may need protecting. And so this is all about visceral practical help. So in the game, this means that caretakers are the doers. They are strong, agile, dexterous. They can handle themselves in a fight, but they're also able to lift and carry and do things as needed. they are good at combat, generally because they're physical, but also in terms of understanding the environment around them, getting around, moving objects, being physically strong. Now, obviously, everyone can be physical. They can use that, and they can be good at other things as well. But the idea behind a caretaker is they have more motivation in that area, and they're more used to working in that area. All right. So that is the 7 motivations in the game and what the different roles are sort of within a group. As I mentioned before, the aim of this game is not just to focus on combat and defeating enemies, but about finding different ways to solve problems and to achieve your objectives without necessarily always falling back on the same methods again and again and again. So it's not always just fight, combat. So the different motivations allow for different play styles and also provide for some players to have certain moments to shine in an adventure because they're better in certain situations, because they can apply their particular skills. Now, I'm not wedded to the names, and if anyone has a better names for those things, I'm more than happy to change them and give you the credit if you like, but essentially that's what they are. So that's it. Next video, I will talk about how the mechanics of the different motivations work, what their skills look like, how they use them, what it means in terms of the rolling of the dice. The skills I'm essentially calling works after the passage Ephesians 2 verses 10. So if you have any comments, please leave them below. And again, thank you so much for watching.